students, today's agenda is to check homework. We'll be learning about the point-slope formula, and you will be able to do page 3. Today, students will be able to write an equation in slope-intercept form given 2 points using y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And this is called the point-slope formula. This is the third of 3 lessons that are related to similar concepts. In the previous video, we were given 1 point and the slope, and we were able to plug the point in here and the slope in here. But now we're not given the slope, we're given 2 points instead. In the first video of this series, we learned about the slope. So we're going to write the equation in y equals mx plus b form, which is the slope-intercept form. The slope is represented by m, and we're going to use this formula finally. So it's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. It'll make more sense when we start plugging in the information. The slope is also known as the change on y over the change on x, or we use it as rise over run when we're graphing. And then I use the symbols, the sun, because sunrise. So if it's positive, it goes up. If it's negative, it goes down. And then run, I represent it by a little guy running. It runs to the right if it's positive. It runs to the left if it's negative. And remember that B is the y-intercept. It's also known as B, the initial point. And it's always next to the number when x is equal to 0. Okay, now that we have that information down, in here I wrote down again the formula to find the slope of 2 points. So it's m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And I also wrote in here the point slope formula, which is going to help us to write the equation. So here, for number 1, we're given the points 2, negative 1, and the other one is 4, 3. Okay, these are the values of x, and this is y, x, and y. But because we have 2 points, we're going to name this as x1 and y1 because it's from point 1, x2, y2 from point 2. But also, I like to do arrows so that you can see the direction. Some people are visual. And so when it says the slope, which we were given in the previous lesson, but in here we have to find it because we don't have it. So it says that the slope is y2 minus y1. If you notice, y2 is this 3 right here, minus from the formula. And then y1 is right here. y1 is negative 1. Minus from the formula, and then the y1 has a negative, we put minus 1 in there. Over x2, which is 4, minus from the formula, and then x1, which is 2. Then remember that when we have 2 negatives together, it makes the big plus. I also mentioned before, in previous videos, that some professors or teachers like to have these separated. They don't like 2 negative signs together or 2 signs of any kind together. So they separate it with the parentheses. It's the same thing, okay? They're next to each other. They make the big plus. Something that I like for visual people that I like to do is I told them about the dolphins, how when there are shows, one dolphin comes out of the water and jumps over, but then the other one doesn't come out from exactly the same space. Instead, it moves over, and now that one comes up from the water and goes down. So I said the jump of the dolphin. That's the direction that you want to take when you're subtracting. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. You always start at the end and then subtract the y with the y, the x with the x. It's just if it helps to remember. Now that we have that clear, this big plus makes the negatives disappear. So now the 1 is a positive 1. So 3 plus 1 is 4. And then in the denominator, 4 minus 2 is 2. Then we can check if this is either, if we are able to simplify, but better if we are able to divide. In this case, 4 can be divided by 2 and you get 4 divided by 2 is 2. Okay? So first check if it's divisible and you get a whole number, divide it. But if it's not divisible, then simplify it by dividing both by the same number and you get something in the numerator and denominator. Now, in the previous lesson, we were given the slope. In here, we were not given the slope, but we found it that the slope is 2. And we were given 1 point, but in here, we rather have 2 points. Okay, and you're going to have to choose one. It doesn't matter which point you choose, you will get the same answer. So let's choose this one just so that we can work with the negatives. You can choose to use the other one if you wish, okay? So 2, -1. So that's my slope, that's my point. Now we're going to use that information to plug it into y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Okay, so let me put that in here. So it's y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Whoops. Okay, when we have this information, when we have x1 and y1, in reality it can also be x2 and y2 if you decide to choose point 2, okay? It's the same thing. We're just replacing the information of the point that we choose, whichever it is. So it's going to be y minus the y1 is this one right here, -1. Remember that some teachers or professors prefer to have that parenthesis in here. The slope is 2. Okay, that's m right there. We're going to substitute the slope in there. And then we have x minus the point that we choose, that's the 2 right there. So this part is very similar. From here on, it's just like the last lesson, okay? Where we were given the slope, we were given a point, but in here, we found the slope and we chose which point we were going to use. Again, negative and negative make the big plus. So big that it disappears. It makes the 2 negatives disappear, okay? So now it's y plus 1. In the other side, we're going to have distributive property. So 2 times x is 2x. 2 times -2 is -4. Finally, to be able to have the equation in slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. Let me write it in here. Y equals mx plus b. Y equals mx plus b. This is called the slope-intercept. So many terminology. Slope-intercept form of the equation. Why is that called like that? Because the slope is this one right here. And the intercept refers to the y-intercept, which is this one right here. Okay, the y-intercept is always represented by b when y is isolated. So to be able to have y isolated, we need to get rid of whatever is next to it before the equal sign. So we're adding 1. The opposite is to subtract 1. But remember that subtraction doesn't necessarily mean subtraction. And why? Well, let me bring this one down first, and then we will check. Remember the rules of the signs? Same signs we add. Different signs we subtract, but in here we have the same signs. And always in addition and subtraction, we keep the greater sign. So since it's the same signs we add. Different signs we subtract and keep the greater sign. So same signs, we add them. 4 plus 1 is 5. And keep the greater sign, which is negative. Okay, and this is going to be our equation in slope-intercept form. We have the y, the slope is 2, and we already know that because we found it. And the y-intercept, we didn't know it, but now we know that it's -5. That's my initial point if we were to graph. For the homework, you don't have to graph it, but this is good that you know and you interrelate the concepts that we have learned, okay? So this is my initial point. It's always the y-intercept. It's always on y. It's negative, so you go down 5 spaces. From there, you're going to use your slope to graph, so it's going up 1, 2, and 1 run. Remember the sun? That's your rise. Since it's positive, it goes up. Over run, rise over run. The run is positive, so it goes to the right. Up and to the right from the point. 2 spaces up and 1 to the right. 2 spaces up and 1 to the right. You can do the slope as many times as you wish, and then you just graph your line. Perfectly. Okay, so that's the graph. You don't have to do the graph for your homework. All you have to do is find the slope, then use the point slope formula to find the equation. Find the slope, and then find the equation. Okay, we have one more in here. Again, we're going to use the formula for slope. M equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. That's to find our slope. And if you don't want to use or think x1, y1, x2, y2, let me just start with the dolphins. So one dolphin jumps over, and that's for the numerator. So starts here, minus that. 0 minus 3. Over, now the x starts here and jumps over. 0 minus -4. 0 minus from the formula, and then you have -4. If you prefer, you can put the parentheses. If not, ask your professor. In here, negative makes the big plus. Only when they're next to each other. Some people want to do the big plus if you have one negative here and one negative over here. No, it's just next to each other. Only separated by a parenthesis or by nothing. Now you have 0 minus 3. If you have nothing, but they want to take away 3, you don't have anything, that means that you're going to be in debt. 0 plus 4, that's 4. So my slope is going to be -3/4. Okay, so I'm going to give my spacing here so that I can put y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. I'm not trying to be annoying, it's just that sometimes our brain works that if you do chantings, it'll stay within your brain. It'll stay with you and you'll remember it more. So if you notice, y minus y1, x minus x1 is almost the same, except that you have the slope, because the slope is always with the x, okay? So you just have it as a factor outside of that parentheses. Okay, so y minus, which point do you think I'm going to choose? You can choose any of the two, and you can try it with the other one, but for me, this is going to be easier, okay? The second point. So y minus y1 will be that right there. And I know it would be y2 because it's x1, y1, x2, y2. Again, this just means replace it with the x that you have chosen and with the y that you have chosen. Even if you get confused, you can put a little 2 in here. It doesn't matter, okay? It's just the point that you chose. So in here, the slope, we already found that it's -3/4 times x minus, and the value for x2, now that I changed it, is 0. y minus 0 is just y. And then we use distributive property on this side because we have that parenthesis right there. -3/4 times x is -3/4 x. And -3/4 times -0 is just 0. Anytime you multiply by a 0, your answer will be 0. And there is no need to put it. Some people will put negative times negative is positive, and 0 times 3/4 is 0. You don't need to put the 0 anymore, okay? This is just going to be your answer. If you were to graph this, again, you don't need to do the graph. I just want you to see it and relate it to what we have learned in the past. So when we have nothing as the b, that means that the initial point is at 0, 0. Okay? And for graphing, some people do put the plus 0 in there. Then it says -3/4. And even if this negative is in the middle, I try to give it to the top unless there is no space and you're going up more. Okay? But in here, we have plenty of space. You go down. That's the sun right there. Okay, my sun, since it's negative, it goes down. The racing guy, since it's positive, it goes to the right. This negative only belongs to one of them, not both. Okay, so more or less right here. And then +4 will be 1, 2, 3, 4. So -1, 2, 3. +1, 2, 3, 4, right there. That's where I put my point. Not here. I don't put a point with the sun, only with the run, after I run. Okay, that's my graph. Okay, again, we're going to start with the slope formula, which is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So it's like that. Now, if you need to see, just write it. x1, y1, because it's 0.1. x2, y2, because it's 0.2. And then you just start with y2, 0, minus from the formula, and then -2. So 0 minus -2. This time I'm not going to put the parentheses. You can leave it like that as well. Or you can ask your professors. Sometimes they're really annoyed by not putting parentheses. The other one is 3 minus 0, or x2 is 3, minus x1 is 0. The negative and negative together make the big plus. 0 plus 2 is 2. 3 minus 0 is 3. So my slope is 2/3. Now for my equation, remember that I need my slope and I need to choose one of the points. I'll just choose this one because it has positives only. Again, in the formula is y minus y1, but if it gets confusing because of those little 2's, you can put a 2 instead. Equals m times x minus x1. Or you can put a 2 and a 2 in here, okay? That's fine with me. In fact, let's do it so that you see that it's talking about 0.2. But you don't have to do it. Y minus y2 is 0. The slope is 2/3 times x minus x2 is 3. And here, y minus 0 is y. We use distributive property on the other side. 2/3 times x is 2/3 x. And then remember that when we're multiplying a fraction with a whole number, you can just multiply and then divide. Multiply and divide by the denominator. However, I first start with multiplying the signs. Positive times negative is negative, and then I just ignore the signs because I already work with them, right? So 3 times 2, it's 6. 6 divided by 3. Okay, multiply and divide. 3 times 2 is 6. Divided by 3 is 2. Since I don't have anything being added to y or subtracted from y, I don't need to do anything. It's already in y equals mx plus b. Okay, the b is -2, meaning the initial point. And then your m, which is rise and run, is 2/3. Again, you don't have to do the graph, but the initial point is a -2. The more you see it, the more you will remember. So -2 is my initial point. This is the first point. It's B. It's the y-intercept, always on y. the first point. Then this is the sun. Since it's positive, it's sunrise, it's not sunset. Negative is sunset. And then this is the run, it's positive, so it's going to run to the right. Okay? So from the point, you rise 1, 2, and then run 3. 1, 2, 3, right there. And you can repeat that process. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. The rise and run you can do as many times as you want, or you can just do 2 points. We will be using it a little more for repeating the slope several times in the next unit, which is systems of equations. And when you're graphing, we want to be, we want to make sure that we are going through the right points, okay? Because there's going to be another line where they will meet. Okay, for number 4, I have a graph here. And the only difference is now that they're giving us the 2 points on a line. But it's exactly the same thing, okay? So if you need to, you can rewrite those points. If not, then you can just start working with the slope, like m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Oops. And you can decide if this is point 1, point 2, and just go like this, okay, directly. Or again, if you need to write it, -3, 4, 6, 1, and we'll just do the work that we did up with the 3 other ones. Okay, so what is y2? It's 1. Minus, what is y1? It's 4. Notice how now I'm not putting the x1, y1, x2, y2. I'm not doing the dolphins because eventually you can do that. Okay, what is x2? Is 6. What is x1? Oh, minus from the formula, but then the x1 is -3. Oh, was that hard to follow? Well, then just put x1, y1, x2, y2. Some people are visual, and that's perfectly fine. That doesn't mean that you cannot learn it. It means that you'll learn it in a different way. That's all it means. If that's still hard, just do this. Oh, 1 minus 4, so 1 minus 4. Remember that minus has to be there from the formula. 6 minus -3, 6 minus from the formula, and then -3, okay? Negative and negative makes the big plus. Now in here, 1, take away 4. Since you're taking away more than what you have, that means that you end up with a negative, so -3. Different signs, we subtract. So 4 minus 1 is 3. And keep the greater sign. Remember that in here we don't have this as subtraction. It's rather now we see it as the sign of the 4. For the big plus, we have 6 plus 3. That's 9. Remember that I said if this is not if you cannot divide 3 by 9 or -3 by 9 because it's smaller, we can see if we can simplify. So both 3 and 9 are divisible by 3. So -3 divided by 3. And also 9 is divisible by 3. And I'm going to put the answer over here because I don't have any more space. Negative divided by positive is negative. 3 divided by 3 is 1. I'm just reducing or simplifying that fraction. 9 divided by 3 is 3. And so this is my slope in simplified form. This is what we need to use, okay? Now we have to choose a point. I'm just going to choose this one just because it has positives, but you can choose the negative and that's also okay. We use y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So y minus y1 will be, so it's like saying this is x1 and y1 for this purpose. Or you can just put it as x2, y2 and just change it in here. I mean, it doesn't matter as long as you know that this is just the information of the point that you choose. y2 is 1 equals the slope, which is -1/3, is what we found. X minus the x2, which is 6. We use distributive property. And so we have y minus 1 equals Notice how the slope always stays the same. Since you find it, then it stays the same throughout, okay? So negative 1/3 times x is just negative 1/3 x. I multiply the signs first so that I don't have to worry about them anymore. So negative times negative is positive. And remember, when we're multiplying a fraction times a whole number, just multiply in here and then divide by the denominator. So 6 times 1, 6. Divide by 3, 2. Okay, the last step, I'm barely going to have space here. If I'm subtracting, we want to leave y by itself. I'm adding to cancel that negative 1. Subtracting with addition of 1, it's 0, it cancels. And so y equals, we bring down the negative 1/3 x. And 2 plus 1, both are positive, so we add them. Okay, so 2 plus 1 is 3. And keep the greater sign, which is positive, and this is my equation. Now notice how it says that my initial point is at 3, right? The initial point is at 3. So right now we don't have to do the graph because the graph is already given to us. It's right there, positive 3. And then you go down one space and 3 to the right. So down one space and 1, 2, 3 to the right. That will be the next point that I would need to graph my line. They're giving us other points, but when we're graphing this equation, we would have those 2 points. And some people say, why are they different from the points that we got? It's because what matters is that we're graphing a line, and those points are all in the same line, okay? With this, we end our lesson. If you can please give us a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe around here. This is the link to more videos. Here you will find another lesson. Now you're able to do page 3 and have fun.